It's all over the world, not just in the United States or in the West, but when I go to Nigeria and I go to Indonesia, I go to Malaysia, and you see the same thing over and over. Now, some states are coming saying, well, no to Sharia law. It will be quite interesting to see how we're going to finesse this, especially, the federal government, which tends to, the recent massacres committed by Saudi forces when they invaded Yemen, or Saudi forces in Bahrain, there were complete silence over the human rights abuses that were committed. Absolute silence. And their consistent oppression and human rights, by a terrible record in human rights, again, it goes completely without criticism in a variety of things. So now, when Saudi Arabia at some point will retaliate by saying, oh well, okay, so from now on all these American businesses that are doing business in Saudi Arabia, no provision saying that they must be ruled on the basis of comity and reciprocity, that they can be governed by American law. It's disastrous for American businesses if they actually cannot have a provision that chooses American law, and a choice not just of jurisdiction of law, but also forum, that the case be litigated in the United States rather than in Saudi Arabia. And they have the financial base to do that, and to say, well, not American, as it happened several times, no to American corporations, yes to French corporations, to Korean corporations, Chinese corporations. It brings us back to this ongoing circular dynamic of I think the Saudi regime is a spoiled child of colonialism. It was supported to knock off the Ottomans when we needed to knock off the Ottomans, and then once again, miracle or curse, they discovered oil, it became the child we can't disown. And that child constantly creates problems, and I'm not sure what to do with it. Again, I have the utmost respect for all Saudi citizens. This is not a criticism against your country, it's a criticism of the religious ideology that the country chooses to espouse. It's different.
Yes, go ahead. Actually, my question was regarding this choice of abandoning or getting engaged with Sharia. I have talked to people who, even there wasn't Wahhabis, but it seems like this problem is in all parts and all school of thought, and it's kind of, big dilemma. When you mention this issue, there is two big, question coming up. One is that, if you want to say, okay, things come from good, or not coming from good, but the sources and all, like they describe the Sharia this way, then people immediately will answer that human mind is not able to see what is good for them or what is bad for them. And if we knew it, then why God sent Sharia, why God sent Quran anyway, in the first place? We could understand it ourselves. That's one of the first things that, will come up. And the second one is, where is the limitation? Because it's like, you start something, when and how and by which order are you going to stop it? Like, for example, I give an example. In the Quran it says, do not drink alcohol. If you start, getting engaged with Sharia or Quran or whatever, understanding that, okay, drinking alcohol is not, good, but then start saying that, okay, but in Quran it says, wine, sharab, so we can drink whiskey.
It says khamr.
Yeah, so, all this, there is limitation. How is limitation? This is kind of crucial, because it's something that you started and you don't know where you're going.
Well, this criticism, the two points you raised, this has been where contemporary Muslims have been stuck literally since the 1950s. I mean, these same 2 points. The first, about, well, why do you need a religious text? What is ironic is that this same issue has been investigated, studied, discoursed upon, analyzed, not just in the Islamic tradition for centuries. So someone who really wants to get arguments and responses and so on, they can. There's an enormous set of discursive traditions in Islam, but also this same issue is debated constantly in our contemporary world in discourses about the relationship of revelation and rationality. And so a contemporary Muslim who comes and wants to talk about this issue, I'd say first, you need to master or engage, if this is a serious issue and not just a polemic issue, you need to engage the contemporary human thought on issues of revelation and rationality. Because there is Jewish thinkers, Christian thinkers, natural law thinkers, even some Buddhist thinkers have made huge contributions and strides to this whole issue of what is the role of text in, and other than that, if someone wants to shape the fate of a nation, at the least they should know what their forefathers had said in numerous debates about this. So I'll give you just one example. Mullah Sadra is, of course, one of them, but the other guy is skipping my mind right now. Basically, argued this: the text, the text refers in itself to a normative values outside itself. So when the text talks about ma'ruf, good, what is social good, and then it refers to what is hasan, what is arguably an absolute good. When the text talks about contingency and fitra, contingency and intuition, that the text by itself is telling you that it refers to pre-existing transcendental norms of goodness that the text would cease to make sense of. Now, this is just one argument among an ongoing debate back and forth. What I'm not troubled by the question or by the answer to the question. What I'm troubled by is that it is now the 21st century, and Muslim intellectuals who claim to want to have a serious discourse on Sharia are still talking about this issue as if they know nothing about their own literary tradition, or as if they exist in a vacuum unrelated to the rest of the intellectual world. And so, to put it concretely, if I have a student and who wants to start on this issue, I say you have to master contemporary literature on this issue, and you have to master traditional literature on this issue. And what they often discover is that the traditionals made the same argument as the moderns, but in different linguistic conventions. I think that it's such an elementary point, such a basic elementary point, it leads me to say that in the same way that the Sharia bashers don't take Sharia there's no interest in really knowing anything about Sharia tradition. They just want to read whatever confirms their own biases. But neither are Muslims very interested, very serious about Sharia. Because what you see in Saudi Arabia, and actually once you get to know Saudi culture, One of the things that is amazing is that the number or the percentage of those who are educated in Saudi culture that have completely become detached from the Islamic tradition. I mean, some of the severest, most severe and unforgiving critiques of Islam that I've encountered didn't come from what's her name, Wafat Sultan or Hershey Ali or whatever. It actually came from Saudis that I met in Saudi Arabia who said just extremely unforgiving things. And it's simply because the inherited paradigms of puritanical Islam cannot appeal to their intellect as their intellect expands in the world. It appears like child's. I mean, as one of my friends said, I feel like when I talk to our sheikhs in Saudi Arabia, I feel as if they are still kindergarten children, and I don't know whether to pity them, and his expression, not mine, to pat their head, or to yell at them and say, go get an education, and to storm out. And this is someone who holds a very important position in Saudi Arabia. I mean, very important position. But this type of schizophrenia is inevitable in a society that refuses to confront the real intellectual issues. That, in my view, the Puritans are just the other side of the coin of the Islamophobes. I mean, both of them construct a Mickey Mouse version of Sharia, a straw man, and both of them, one group sits there and sanctifies the straw man and worships it, and the other group hates the straw man. Between the two, I don't know which I prefer more, if I have to prefer one of them. Straw man is a straw man.
Yes. Well, I find this interesting. I come from this as an historian rather than anybody with any legal background, and many fascinating questions. But I'm going to just ask one that haven't yet addressed, which is that, let's just take the United States. The United States, although much more religious than Europe, is an increasing number of people who belong to no faiths at all. And from my perspective, in the long run, the real discourse is going to be between people who do believe in some transcendental basis for law and so forth, and those who do not. And right now, it's mostly the negative people like Hitchens and so forth. They're really polemicists. But I think this will become normative. And what's happened is, of course, in this country, you have cultural Jews. You actually have cultural Catholics. People whose traditions are Catholic, but they really don't operate intellectually if they're with that. Do you think in our kind of country there will be eventually people who are cultural Muslims?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I think, it already exists. It already exists and exists more I mean, for one, in the academia, people like Bassam Tibi, for instance, who wrote The Crisis of the Muslim Mind, or someone like Muhammad Arkoun, or they were. It's so much so that I read an article in the Jerusalem Post trying to analyze why reform-minded Muslims are not, in the point of view of the author of this article, are not winning the day